If at first you don't succeed, try again. Often a good axiom for life, but is it a good axiom in this case?
Right. Perseverance, I guess, can be a virtue in some instances, but I would argue no here. So believe it or not, DOJ technically is allowed to try yet again. You can continually try to indict a person. You can go to one grand jury after another. That said, for all realistic and practical purposes, someone needs to get it through the Justice Department's head. This is over. We have never, I can point to no case in the last 20 years where you've had a case thrown out by a judge, then you had a grand jury refuse to indict it, which is very hard to do. Then you had a second grand jury a week later refuse to re-indict it. This is an embarrassment for DOJ. The writing could not be any clearer on the wall. This case is simply not going to happen. One of the lessons that you learn as a prosecutor is you have to pick your battles and you have to know when to cut your losses. That time has come for DOJ on this case.
Well, I feel like we could honestly just go to break and leave it there because that seems very clear. But just to drill down on that.
Saying we got a chance.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. But you said that it's very hard to go before a grand jury and not get an indictment. Can you just expand on that and why it means here that these repeated attempts are all the more, I mean, we're clearly all in agreement here, but help us understand further.
Yeah, so the grand jury is completely one-sided. Everyone's heard the axiom about indicting a ham sandwich. I'm here to tell you it's true. I mean, the only people in the room are the prosecutor, your friendly FBI agent who's testifying for you, the grand jurors, and a court reporter. There's no defense lawyer. There's no judge. The standard of proof is just probable cause. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And all you have to do is get 50 plus 50%, a majority of the grand jury, and not unanimity like you would need with the trial jury. I do want to make this point. I may be stealing David Urban's thunder here. Letitia James did target Donald Trump with her lawsuit politically. And I was critical of that, and I remain critical of that. It was wrong the way she ran for office by saying, vote for me for New York AG, and I promise you I will nail Donald Trump. This is wrong, too. They're both wrong. Let's hope this nonsense ends both ways.
David Urban, your name has been invoked.
So listen, to Ali's point there, I think Letitia James now should make some T-shirts up like Letitia James greater symbol ham sandwich, and then pass them, like start wearing those around.
Somebody call up Reagan.
Yeah, you know what's interesting here is Caitlin. I was talking to her briefly before this, and at some point you wonder what's going on with that grand jury. To Ellie's point about you can indict a ham sandwich, is there a certain level of jury nullification in this case where the jurors are saying, look, we know that this is the fact pattern that's being presented to us, but we just don't believe it, right? And so even though they may find that there's more likely than not that this happened and they would indict in normal cases, that this has been in the news so much and they see it, and so they're nullifying, they're not indicting specifically because of that. So curious, you're not going to pull these grand jurors, they're not going to ever find out, but I think Caitlin raised that issue with me in the green room. We were talking, and I thought it was very, very valid.
To David's point, it sounds like they're sending a message. I would argue, I wonder if one person is going to get that message, and that's Donald Trump. Because even though everything Ellie just said is true in normal times, we are not in normal times. So I think we should wait and see what the Truth Social post looks like when President Trump gets this news.
Pull that up.
And let's see if he triples down.
Yeah. Paul Begala, what do you think this says about, we do know that the president had put out on Truth Social that he wanted a list of people essentially gone after. The system is basically saying, well, nope, sorry, can't do that for you.
Yeah, this goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, grand juries, as a check on the king's powers. Get citizens to take a look before you can charge someone. And Ellie's right. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I don't want to play one on TV. But you always win when you're the prosecutor because there's no defense lawyer, there's no defense witnesses, there's no defense. And yet here, this grand jury, by the way, I want to note, it's in Virginia, where Trump did pretty well. He didn't win, but he did pretty well. Not in D.C., where he lost like 90%.
But it's in the Northern Virginia suburbs.
No, it's in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is the rocket dock. I know about this.
But Norfolk turned it down, too.
Yeah.
That was the first time.
This is a district that they usually take terrorism cases, CIA cases, Pentagon cases. So it's a very hawkish district for a prosecutor. It's good for a prosecutor. So this is a huge It's not just an embarrassment, it's a miscarriage of justice. I think Ellie's right, David's right. I don't think Attorney General James should have campaigned saying I'm going to target anybody, including Mr. Trump. That was a mistake. But this is a miscarriage of justice, too, because she is clearly innocent. I don't think it's jury nullification. I think this is a case where they're alleging that she committed mortgage fraud because she said a house that she was buying essentially for her niece to live in, or grandniece, was going to be a rental property, which it wasn't. By the way, there's been reporting that Donald Trump did the same thing with 2 mansions in Palm Beach that he bought in the 90s. It's actually a very common thing, and it, according to this grand jury and according to a lot of legal experts, it's just not a crime.
Lulu, do you agree with this sort of broader perspective about, I mean, the president and Letitia James have been going at each other politically, and Tish James did, in fact, run on going after him. Is that something that we should see happening, regardless of what side one sits on politically?
So part of the problem here is that, right, that AGs are political animals themselves. They have to run in a partisan way, and they have to run an election. And she was running in New York, where that kind of rhetoric gets you votes. And so while you don't agree with it, you can understand it. This thing of the mortgage fraud we've seen over and over and over again being used by this administration. It's weak sauce. Let's be honest here. Going after a sitting AG over something like this, I mean, we're not talking bribery. We're not talking corruption. We're not talking that even she took a vacation when she should have been working down to Cabo. I mean, this is literally something that is something that the president himself might have done. And so it is, by any measure, weaponizing the justice system. And frankly, I got to tell you, this is like, I'm bored of the back and forth. Is it Letitia James today? Is it Comey tomorrow? It's like these names. Like, can we just retire them already?
One just quick point on Lulu, just to push back on what Lulu said real quickly. You know, these people are political animals, right? They do run politically. But I think that to say somehow it's okay to target Donald Trump, most people who are running.
I don't agree with
No. But most people who are running politically.
I'm just trying to explain.
Most people running
that in the
politically
same way
say,
that Donald Trump says, in his political capacity, I'm, this person's my enemy. I don't like them. Et cetera, et cetera.
Most prosecutors say we're going to drive down crime. We're going to root out Republican, whatever, malfeasance, right?
I wouldn't have
painted
done
with
it.
a much broader
I think
brush
it painted
than
her entire
my raison
prosecution.
d'etre is to take down Donald Trump, right? That was Tish James's whole campaign.
Ellie Honig, I'm going to put up for a second the list of others that the president has put on, basically on a target list, right? And it's a broader group here. Obviously, Comey and Tish James are the 2 people Lulu just mentioned as like, can we retire those names already? Perhaps. But these are, others who have faced something similar. Adam Schiff, it's been a similar issue with these mortgage questions. I think my big picture question to you here, and I think it could help tell us like how much more we're going to see with this group, is whether this was a win for Tish James or a loss for the DOJ, right? Like, is this a loss for this whole strategy that the president is trying to push with with his own Department of Justice, or is this specifically about the facts of this case?
Well, I think it's both, Casey. I mean, first of all, the Letitia James allegations were fairly thin. The entire amount of the alleged mortgage fraud was $18,000, of which she only ever received a few $1,000s. I will tell you, I never would have intaked a case involving that small of a loss amount when I was a federal prosecutor. So I think there were problems with the proof. And I'd contrast that, by the way, with John Bolton, where I think the allegations in the indictment against John Bolton are very substantial. And I would sort of put that in a different category. But bigger picture, Casey, I think this is an example. Look, our system is certainly imperfect, but it is an example of some of the guardrails and checks that we have in place doing their work, right? You cannot just say, I want to lock this person up. You have to go through a grand jury. As Bagala said, this is one of our oldest bulwarks. You have to get approval from a grand jury. You have to avoid getting dismissed by a judge. Then you have to go to trial. The defendant gets all their constitutional rights. And then finally, you have a trial jury. And if any of those mechanisms rejects the case, then as a prosecutor, you lose. So I think that what Trump is trying to do through this DOJ is condemnable, and I hope it stops. But I also think this is an example of the system holding up.
Ellie, how does Lindsay Halligan play into this? And how exactly does the president continue with some of this, if that's in fact what we see him say he wants to do, if in fact that's been found to be illegitimate? And he had to go looking for her in the first place just to get anybody to bring these indictments.
Yeah, let's remember the origin of this whole thing. This was really strike one. Today was strike three. Last week was strike two, the other grand jury rejection. But strike one happened when Donald Trump put on Truth Social. I'm paraphrasing, but we've all seen the Truth Social. You know, I want to see Letitia James and Adam Schiff and Jim Comey all indicted. They're all guilty as hell. A few days later, Pam Bondi says, sure, we'll get on it. The problem was the U.S. attorney at the time for the Eastern District of Virginia, a guy named Eric Siebert, by the way, a conservative veteran prosecutor who'd been put in place by Trump, he basically said, I don't see it with respect to the James and Comey cases. Therefore, he was pushed out the door. The replacement who was then brought in was Lindsay Halligan, who had never been a prosecutor for one day. Before that, she had been Trump's personal lawyer. She takes the job and she goes into a grand jury and manages to get the indictment of Letitia James, the first one. But that gets thrown out because the manner in which she was appointed was unconstitutional. Trump did not get to pick another temporary replacement. So that was strike one. Lindsay Halligan was unconstitutionally serving as the U.S. attorney. Last week's grand jury rejection was strike two. Today's rejection is strike three.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.